Hi, today we will explain the storyline of the movie titled Step Brothers, which was released in 2008. Okay, let's get right to the story. Dale's father, a doctor named Robert, falls in love with Brennan's mother, named Nancy, after meeting her at a press conference. Brennan is a 39-year-old man who still lives with Nancy, while Dale is 40 years old and is Robert's only son who still lives with him. After getting married, Robert and Nancy agree to share their house with the two of them, even though they don't seem to like each other. To make a long story short, Nancy eventually brought Brennan to Robert's house, and for the first time they faced each other and exchanged greetings. During dinner, Nancy and Robert tried to bring them closer together, and here, Robert and Nancy realized that their children had a lot in common. However, Brennan and Dale still didn't like each other and looked at each other with disdain. Brennan tried to show off his singing talent, but Dale didn't want to be outdone and tried to prove that he could sing too. It was also revealed that Dale was an unemployed man who dreamed of having his own football league. Coincidentally, Brennan had the same dream. He used to have a good job, but now he is unemployed. Nancy and Robert then say that they will be placed in the same room because Dale doesn't want to give up his drum room for Brennan's room. Reluctantly, Dale agrees to his parents' request, but before allowing Brennan to sleep in his room, Dale warns Brennan not to touch his drum set at all. Before going to bed, Robert and Nancy chatted in their room. Robert planned to go sailing with Nancy. Meanwhile, Nancy explained why Brennan was still living with her. Nancy said that Brennan's life had become much harder since she and Brennan's father divorced. Brennan has a younger brother named Derek, who is more successful. Brennan aspired to be a singer, but he buried his dreams after Derek humiliated him at a singing event. Nancy admitted that she had only heard Brennan sing twice, while Derek had fared better and was more successful, even winning a lip-syncing contest. Since then, Brennan had become a sensitive and insecure man. Before going to bed, Robert also explained why Dale didn't live independently. Dale said he wanted to join the family business, even though his father was a doctor. Robert couldn't make Dale understand his work, so he let Dale stay at home. The next day, the new family dynamics began. Dale and Brennan seemed to tease each other constantly and acted like children. Brennan broke Dale's rule and played his drums as revenge for being pushed off the boat during their trip. It turned out Dale knew every detail of his drums, so even though Brennan had tidied them up after playing, Dale noticed the drumsticks were slightly scratched. Brennan, of course, didn't admit it, but eventually they argued because both insisted on their positions. As a result of the fight, Nancy had to leave an important meeting at the office because the children wouldn't stop fighting, and Robert had to take leave from the hospital to break up Dale and Brennan. No one could separate them until they ended up hitting each other until they fainted. After they came to, Brennan and Dale tried to defend themselves, so Nancy and Robert wouldn't punish them. Robert, annoyed by the commotion, told Dale to fix the damage and ordered both of them to find jobs within a month. Not only that, but both of them sulked when Robert and Nancy banned them from watching TV for a week. Brennan and Dale's behavior turned out to be quite similar. That night, they woke up in the middle of the night and made a mess in the kitchen. The next morning, Nancy and Robert both found out that their children had been sleepwalking. This made Nancy very frustrated, but Robert told her to calm down because they would be leaving in a month. Nancy then woke up Brennan and told him to get ready because Derek was coming. Meanwhile, Brennan's younger brother, Derek, is now married. He is the vice president of the largest helicopter rental company on the western seaboard and has a wife named Alice and 2 children. He has been training his children to sing as well as he can since they were young. Nancy invited them all over for dinner, and during the meal, Derek proudly shared his amazing experiences from his vacation with famous people. This was so annoying to Dale that he couldn't help but interrupt Derek. Unlike Brennan, Derek was more friendly and good at winning Robert's heart, while Brennan didn't want to see Derek, so he hid in Dale's treehouse. After dinner, Dale rushed up to the treehouse and confirmed Brennan's statement that his brother was indeed annoying. On the other hand, Robert seemed to share Derek's dream of sailing, and he was so excited talking to Derek that he didn't even think about Brennan and Dale. Shortly after, Derek approaches Brennan at the treehouse to say hello. Here, Dale openly dislikes Derek, especially since Derek flaunts everything he has and tries to belittle Dale. Derek also tells Brennan that Nancy asked him to give Brennan a job. Derek then challenges Dale to hit him, which Dale does without hesitation. Unexpectedly, Derek's wife thanks Dale and admits she's interested in him without Derek knowing. Alice also tries to ask Dale out on a date after confessing she's unhappy with her life and Derek's demanding nature. Since that night, Brennan became more sympathetic toward Dale, and the two began showing off their rare collections.
programa empieza en 20 minutos, anda.
Brennan pulled out a samurai sword signed by Randy Jackson from American Idol, while Dale showed off his advanced night vision goggles. This made Brennan respect Dale even more as his stepbrother. After that, they agreed to become friends, realizing they had a lot in common. Nancy noticed they seemed to be developing feelings for each other, but Robert had a bad feeling. The next day, Brennan and Dale attended job interviews together at several companies. Instead of going separately, they came as a team and wore matching outfits that were inappropriate for the positions they were applying for. However, none of the interviews at the big companies went well because they acted childish and unprofessional. It was clear from their answers that they didn't want to work, and even when they were almost offered a job at a small business, Dale sabotaged it. After the interviews, Brennan was worried that Robert would kick them out, but Dale told him not to worry.
Desde aquel día, Brennan no volvió a cantar.
On the way home, they discussed their business plans. Dale thought their musical talent could be used to build an international entertainment business, which excited Brennan and motivated him to practice music with Dale. However, their enthusiasm soon faded again. On the way home, Dale also revealed that he had an enemy who controlled certain hours of the day. Surprisingly, the enemy in question was a young boy named Chris and his gang. Without any resistance, Chris and his gang bullied them both, even though Brennan and Dale were much older than Chris and his friends. They reported this to Nancy, who quickly forgave them, but not Robert. That evening, Robert and Nancy announced that they were selling their house to sail away together in retirement. For this, they had already transferred money to Brennan and Dale's accounts so they could live independently. Not only that, they also planned to enroll both of them in psychological therapy to help them behave like adults. Brennan was furious to hear that he and Dale weren't included in their sailing plans. Nancy and Robert's decision was final, so Brennan and Dale had to accept it. That night, Dale and Brennan discussed the business plan they had talked about earlier that afternoon. Before finalizing the plan, Dale wanted to hear Brennan sing. Brennan reluctantly sang, but he felt self-conscious about his voice not sounding its best. However, Dale disagreed. According to him, Brennan's voice was amazing. The next morning, they would begin making a video presentation to attract potential business investors. Meanwhile, they would thwart Derek's plan to sell Robert's house, trying various scenarios to prevent potential buyers from purchasing it.
Dios.
The following day, Brennan and Dale began therapy with their respective psychiatrists. Brennan gets an appointment with a female psychiatrist named Denise, who catches his eye. He tries to flirt with Denise openly, even though it makes the counseling session uncomfortable. A few days later, Brennan and Dale have dinner with Derek's family to celebrate Derek's birthday. Here, Robert announces that Derek will now be included in his will. Not to be outdone, Dale also delivers a speech aimed at finding investors for their business, which they plan to name Prestige Worldwide. They show a video clip where they filmed themselves on Robert's private boat. As Robert had predicted, they damage the boat and feel no remorse. Meanwhile, Robert realizes that his and Nancy's dream of sailing has been shattered. Later, they celebrated Christmas Eve at home. Robert felt unhappy and decided to spend Christmas Eve alone at a restaurant. Meanwhile, Brennan and Dale felt no remorse for destroying Robert's boat. Additionally, Nancy and Robert argued about their respective sons. Nancy felt Robert should pay more attention to Dale and Brennan. Furthermore, Brennan vented his frustration at Robert. The rest of Christmas Eve was chaotic because Brennan and Dale behaved brutally while sleepwalking. The next day, they and Derek's family had a meal together, and Alice once again invited Dale to have fun without Derek's knowledge. That night, Robert and Nancy announced that they had decided to divorce. Robert couldn't stand Brennan and Dale anymore, as they had caused him and Nancy to hate each other. In response to the news, Dale and Brennan overreacted, but Robert had made up his mind and would leave the next day. The next day, Robert emptied his house but allowed Dale and Brennan to stay in their room. Due to this change, Dale and Brennan started arguing again, with Dale blaming Brennan. And as a result, Brennan played Dale's drums. Dale flew into a rage upon hearing his drum being touched and struck Brennan unconscious. Believing Brennan to be dead, Dale dragged his body and prepared to bury him in the yard. However, Brennan was still alive and turned on Dale. In short, they fought until they were both exhausted. They woke up in the yard and decided to live separately. Brennan started to rebuild his life by asking Derek for a job. He also underwent therapy seriously and asked Denise for help to mature. On the other hand, Dale also looked for a job. Slowly, Brennan lived his life like an adult. He got an interview at Derek's office and was trusted to organize Derek's annual office event. Meanwhile, Dale successfully secured a job at a catering service. Not long after, Brennan and Dale reunited at Derek's prestigious annual office event, where they both invited Robert and Nancy. Derek had warned Brennan not to disrupt the event because he needed to meet his sales targets. Brennan and Dale awkwardly greeted each other and made small talk, both admitting they no longer collected the childish items they used to display. At first, Derek and his colleagues were impressed by Brennan's ability to organize the event. Unfortunately, the band Brennan hired ruined the atmosphere and caused a commotion, leading Derek to immediately fire Brennan and dismiss the band. This left Brennan frustrated, as he had worked hard to secure this job. However, Robert encouraged Brennan and urged him to reignite Brennan's and Dale's passion for music. With a little encouragement, Dale realized that working at a company wasn't his true calling.
Dale se encarga del catering.
Seeing Dale take the stage, Derek tried to mock him the way he had mocked Brennan before, but Brennan didn't want his brother to be humiliated like that. He then joined the stage and began singing,
Es una habilidad alucinante.
causing all the guests who had initially looked down on Dale to gather when they heard Brennan's voice. It didn't stop there. Brennan's voice sparked positive feelings in the hearts of his listeners, including Derek, who remembered how close he and his brother used to be.
Hasta tomorrow.
Even Denise, Brennan's psychiatrist who had always been afraid of him, was captivated by his voice. This also reignited the love between Robert and Nancy, which had once faded. Everyone cheered and clapped proudly after the performance ended. This had a positive impact on Derek's sales and made him want to reconcile with Brennan. Meanwhile, Dale decided to end his affair with Alice. 6 months later, Dale and Brennan's business was thriving, though not the prestige worldwide venture they had originally planned, but a karaoke business named Karaoke and Roll. With pride, they shared the progress of their business with Robert and their families during their Christmas dinner. They now owned 3 restaurants, 6 bars, and 2 more restaurants in the works. Not only that, but Robert bought them a boat, complete with toys and adult magazines. In the end, despite leading adult lives, Dale and Brennan never forgot their childish ways. They took the time to teach Chris and a group of kids from Dale's neighborhood who had once bullied them a lesson.